Welcome, everyone, to Rupp Pfalzgraf's Empire State Entrepreneurs and New York Business Law podcast, a fun and informative forum for us to feature our clients, strategic partners, and community leaders in order to talk about relevant issues for entrepreneurs and business owners throughout New York. My name is David Pfalzgraf, and I'm blessed to be the managing partner at Rupp Pfalzgraf, a full-service law firm headquartered here in Buffalo, New York, with offices throughout the state. We're a full-service firm that has a ton of momentum right now and using this podcast to tell our story. And as always, before we get to our special guests, I wanted to take a quick minute to thank our good friends at INSEP, Mike and Eric, for hosting us in this really cool podcast studio. My firm has been using INSEP for the past year on a number of projects, and they're doing just a great job for us. So with that, today, I'm excited to welcome two dear friends, Evan Giokas and CJ Montante, who both work and run a company called MGM Coaching, which is a Buffalo-based consulting firm that helps empower leaders and teams to maximize work performance by understanding and utilizing their instinctive strengths and unique abilities. Helping professionals today become leaders tomorrow, which is a tagline that I love, and I can speak firsthand from the great work that they're doing with my law firm about the value that both of these guys bring each and every day to the work that they're doing. So welcome.
Dave.
What an intro.
Seriously, I don't know if I could have said it any better myself. And, it's been just an exciting journey. As soon as you mentioned podcasting, you got our antennas going. So we're excited to be here.
Yeah, we always relish the opportunity to have a conversation with you, and so now being able to do it and spread some good messages across the Western New York entrepreneur industry, we're excited.
Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days. And I know both of you pretty well personally. Evan and I go back probably even further than CJ and I go back. But I'm curious as to how this partnership was formed. I know, Evan, you had been working in the college confidence arena and as a coach for helping families navigate the challenges that come with their kids applying to colleges. But tell me a little bit about how that business initiative then led to you working with CJ on MGM Coaching.
Absolutely. And I know this is one of your favorite stories to tell.
You go.
I'll let you get to the interception point. But I am also blessed, and I don't say that lightly, to have worked with so many families in the Buffalo area and nationwide over the last 13 years since the inception of College Confidence Coach. And it has been a journey that has been transformative. It has led to relocations. It's led to national presence. It's led to, all sorts of growth and exciting opportunities, but none the least of which, CJ and I had a coincidental meeting point. We were playing in a golf tournament and we're randomly paired together, and we both played so poorly that we got paired together the next day too.
Dead last.
At the bottom of the pack.
Dead last.
So, and you know what? We don't admit that, but
I do.
Here it is for the public. So we had done just an unbelievable, as you'll, I'm sure get the impression, just an unbelievable job of buzzing ideas and, tell me what you do, what are you up to? And CJ was at a much different point in his life than I was at this moment, but it ended up leading to a reconnection, which I think is pretty funny and ironic, and I'll let CJ take over the other half of the story, but a really cool inception point for MGM.
Yeah, it must have been August 2017, so I was still living in Cincinnati, Ohio. Evan was back in Buffalo at that point.
Yep.
Like you said, we were playing in a golf tournament, and it's ironic because our first business venture was based around networking, right? And a big point of networking is following up. So we play this golf tournament together, and we don't follow up with each other, lo and behold, right? So 6 months later, I'm in Cincinnati, like I said, Evan's in Buffalo. We randomly get invited on a golf trip, and I walk in the house, Evan walks in the house, we look at each other, we're like, wait, I know you. I met you 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And long story short, I hear Evan talking to a client of his from College Confidence Coach, and my jaw sort of hit the floor. And at this point, I was working in real estate development, doing some neighborhood redevelopment in Cincinnati. And it just really started, piquing my interest in terms of what he did and what he's been growing for, like you said, now 13 years in the Western New York region. And so fast forward a few years, COVID hits. I lose my job out in Denver, move back to Buffalo. start my own real estate development company. And then in that time, Evan and I reconnect business-wise. At this point, we're close friends. But I say, hey, let's teach your students once they go to college how to network, how to build relationships, how to form connections that will allow them to propel their career even further now that they have, this background knowledge of their cognitive mind and internal self-validation and who they are. But now it's okay, let's go out, build those professional contacts that will eventually lead to jobs, partnerships, business ventures, you name it. So, yeah, it's been a wild now, I guess, coming up on 7 years of friendship. But it certainly started as a personal friendship and moved into a professional one. So,
and then
couldn't be more blessed.
One step further. So that business, for all intents and purposes, was successful in its message, and it was called The Art of Successful Networking, which we do still, offer to students who come through College Confidence Program. But people who were listening to the course, either with their children or, just kind of hearing about it on their own, started asking the question, well, can you do that for our team? We have a business. Can you help us learn and optimize? And so need was the inspiration. And then we developed a process that ended up becoming more than just networking coaching and developed into what MGM coaching is today.
What was it hard for you, Evan, who had this established foundation and a very great business and a second to none reputation in town for doing the college confidence coach? How did you react? Or as an entrepreneur, when lawyers in my firm present ideas or let's think about this issue differently, there's always at times resistant to change, and
Sure.
it's very easy to maintain the status quo. But I'm curious from your perspective, when CJ thought there might be applicability to this sort of process that you had put together, this proprietary process for college families, what was your initial reaction as to whether, number one, it would have applicability on a broader scale, and number two, whether you were even interested in sort of taking a chance on phase two of the business?
Sure. So I'm going to be careful with this response because this can be one of those hour-longers that we had discussed, because everything that I have done to this point has been rooted in this nucleus. And the nucleus is our discovery process, whether it's for College Confidence Coach, MGM Coaching, Thrive Together, which is our new relationship coaching company that we're using. Everything's rooted in this nucleus discovery process. And in that nucleus is one tool called the cognitive profile. And it's something that we use to measure individuals with, to understand who they are and what their instinctual needs say about them. And the reason that I bring that up is when you look at the cognitive index, I am what's called a 10 quick start. And I know a lot of the audience won't know what that means, but quick 30-second summary. Quick start is an action mode that measures for how comfortable or how much someone thrives in situations that present risk, that present uncertainty, that present unknowns, and the way that they instinctually handle those situations. As a 10 quick start, any bright flashing object that presents new opportunities, new ventures, new excitement is something that I am instinctually inclined to want to explore. And I really don't have an instinctual fear of venturing towards it. So the answer to the question is beyond excited. And there was no hesitation in terms of what do we do with it. It was more so, well, what do we create? Who's the audience? Jumping right into it. And with, 10 plus years of experience at that point, I think it was it was easier to come up with, what that looked like and how that was going to work. But in terms of my excitement levels and wanting to jump into it, I was both feet in before he finished the sentence.
That's great. And CJ, I guess from your perspective, a similar question. Your family had built a incredibly successful business in Uniland, and you've got family members that are the patriarchs, and a father's in the business, and a brother's in the business,
Yep.
and so I've always wondered, that would have been an easy path for you to take. Moving back here from Denver, it would almost be natural that you and I would be working together, but with you as a business development officer at Uniland Construction or Uniland Development. So this almost seems like a riskier or are doubling down on the entrepreneurial spirit that your grandfather originally had. And did that go through your mind that it would have been an easier path, but this was one that sort of today at least is represents your calling?
100%. And it's funny because I get it often, especially by people who just meet me for the first time and know my grandfather, my aunt, my uncle, my dad, and they say, "So are you with Uniland? Are you not with Uniland?" And I always go through this story of, you're right, I moved back during COVID and had this idea immediately of, okay, I want to do real estate development, but my focus being community redevelopment and sort of underinvested urban neighborhood redevelopment, which for those of you who know Uniland, it's just different. It's different assets, right? So it's different real estate work than what they do. So I proposed it, hey, what if we partnered up? What if I created this sort of department within the larger business and ran with it? Well, again, we're in the middle of COVID. No one has any idea what's going on. So instead of me sort of joining Uniland, I decided to do it myself. And it couldn't have been better received by my family, which made it even easier because I had such great mentorship. I had such great support. But it allowed me to really explore my entrepreneurial journey that honestly started back in college when I ran a business my junior year called Campus Solutions. So I think, I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit as my grandfather had. And the world's got a funny way of working out where it allowed me to, move home, meet my now wife, have a kid, start two businesses, and here we are sitting down. So yeah, it's really interesting because I do get the question often, why don't you go into Uniland? Why not, go into the family business? And honestly, I could not think of a better spot of where I am right now. So obviously I love my family. I love what they do. I love the business and I love what they've done for the Western New York region. But, I'm excited to forge my own path. So
look, I love individuals who want to make their own path and respect obviously the opportunities that exist, but also want to create their own identity and their own path forward. So I really respect and admire sort of the willingness to take a risk and to make an investment in yourself. And so this partnership gets formed sort of in the early 2020, 2021 timeframe. Evan's still working hard on College Confidence Coach, but MGM sort of comes out of that work that you're doing. And I'm curious as to how you found what I'll call the secret sauce for College Confidence Coach and this proprietary approach that you take to, this cognitive profiling, and how did it apply? Did you find similarities between the families you were working with on the College Confidence side, Evan, to the executives you began working for in professional services firms or other clientele that you developed on the MGM side? Yeah,
well, it wasn't anything new. So, two different stories, right? The way that I discovered cognitive was actually when I was debating, what I was going to do with my future and had taken the LSAT and been admitted to law school. And a mentor of mine at the time had given me a book about the theory of cognation. And I took what I had at that point, flew out to Chicago, listened to Kathy Colby speak about her theory of cognation and, where it developed. And in the hotel room that night is where I had the aha moment that had I known this prior to this point in my life, I would have never struggled the way that I did in undergraduate or in trying to develop what I was going to do with my path. So the original use for cognation was for people who were in career transition, for people who were trying to discover why what they've been doing for so long wasn't leading to long-term success or leading to long-term fulfillment. And I took that at that time and applied it to the discovery process that we developed for students in College Confidence Coach. And then obviously through years of practice and, creating an expertise in that craft, there had been people along the way that had said, will you profile me? Will you profile my wife? Will you profile my, whoever, right? So I had done this, occasionally with business professionals, but never anything that I had put into, a formal business plan. More so because I was building College Confidence Coach than ready to take that on. But the second part to that was the actual assessment and the delivery of the results and the impact that they have on an individual, regardless of if they are 16 years old or they're 45 years old, is astounding. Because what cognation does different than using an affective tool or a personality test that so many of us have taken is it creates a foundation and a base that never changes. And the impact and the importance of saying that is, if you take a Myers-Briggs, you take a DISC profile, you take a strengths finder, all important tools that probably a lot of listeners have taken at one point or another, those assessments are great ways to learn more about your personality, and they're great ways to learn more about your emotion. But depending on where you're at in your life and who's involved or what the time frame is and your levels of stress or happiness, those results can skew. And the cognitive test and the theory of cognation is very clear in the fact that who you are once your brain has fully developed is who you'll be throughout your life. So it wasn't difficult, I guess, is the answer to the question. It wasn't difficult to take what we had already built. And like I said, cognation and the assessments that we use are one part of the discovery process that we built, but it wasn't easy, or it wasn't difficult to repurpose that, repackage it, and then find new strategies and create new solutions for business professionals.
And maybe you could take that a step further and give us an example. And please don't use the moderator of this podcast to break down what my cognation profile is. Someday we'll do that. But for now, like the self-awareness piece, I've been fascinated with, and I think the journey we've been on as a law firm with your help about being more reflective and trying to play to all of our lawyers' strengths and sort of recognizing that we're not all built the same, and so what creates or causes stress for one might not be the same for another. So generally speaking, how have you found that process of self-awareness to be impactful on? Let's go to the business side of MGM, or like what results have you seen this when you started to work with professionals and made them more self-aware about who they are and what their drivers or what their stress or strain causers are?
Sure. Well, again, I don't mean to keep breaking all of your questions into multi-point answers, but a lot of the time what we do is we break it into phases. So right off the bat, I think that the impact of receiving your cognitive result is a very empowering moment. And all three of us have gone through that. So when you get it and, with us delivering results and delivering these interpretations, I think that the first moment is, wow, somebody finally gets me. And that's important for a couple different reasons. One, we're trying to empower the individual with understanding that for their entire lives, until they're given the assessment, they're taught to do things, or they're given advice on how to do things from a cognitive or an affective perspective, meaning this is what you're good at, this is what you should do, or this is how you respond and how you feel. And the second that they understand themselves from an instinctual perspective, things change. So that first moment is where we build trust, with whoever we're working with, whether it's an attorney, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a student. That first delivery and interpretation of the results is really, really impactful. From there, once you understand that this is who I am, the coaching moves into, well, what's going to cause you to go into sync and what's going to cause you to go into strain? And how can you approach different tasks, different roles, different responsibilities, conversations, or obligations that will be more effective or be better optimized or more easily optimized if you are performing them in a way that aligns with your unique and natural abilities, as opposed to doing things the way that you believe you're supposed to do them. And that opens communication channels. And so that second phase of what we do with people is alleviating the tension of, I'm told that I should do it this way. I believe I could do it that way. And, as leaders, understanding who we have on our team and building matrices of this person is in sync, this person is in strain, it creates a visual representation of what we have that's working and what we have that isn't. So again, it goes from trust building to applicable strategies.
Well, and I'll even add to that, where when I first understood my cognitive profile a few years ago, we were in Cincinnati doing a speaking engagement, and Evan essentially started coaching me. And he's like, hey, why do you do things the way you do them, right? And I'm like, well, I've been taught, told, and trained this is how I should do things. And he goes, okay, well, you need to understand your cognitive profile because I think you're actually completely different than the way you're doing things. And so when you look at the way we work, right, internally, whether it's MGM coaching, whether it's college confidence coach, whatever the case may be, affectively, right? We talked about these personality tests that people have taken before, Myers-Briggs, Gallup Strength Finder, DISC assessments, whatever. When we take those assessments, we're oftentimes very similar. Our cognitive profiles are so different, though, that we understand, okay, if we've got a specific task that deals with scheduling, with building a procedure, with organizing a firm, with organizing our own company, I should be the one handling that task. If we've got something that requires a little bit more creativity, something a little bit more innovative, something that requires a little bit more risk and uncertainty, Evan's going to be the one taking over that task. So, even if we move this on into a entrepreneur's outlook on things, having that understanding of, okay, here's who I am, here's the sort of tasks, roles, and responsibilities that's going to allow me to be in sync with what I'm doing. Then you understand, here are the team members I need to be bringing on to my company in order to allow myself to stay in sync as opposed to, moving into strain on a day-to-day basis. So that baseline understanding of who you are and finding, again, what Evan calls that internal self-validation is so vital for a student, a professional, a leader, a manager, an employee, whoever you may be.
Tell me, for a young entrepreneur listener out there who's building out his team and building out his business, his or her business, is it ever too early or too soon to engage with MGM to do some of this self validation and cognitive profiling of, say, it was a team of 6, a lean team of 6? Is it ever too soon? Do you need to be a more established business or have 100 employees or be a professional services firm or whatever it is? But where do you think your company can add the most value?
So the answer is there's never too early a point to begin learning about yourself. And I think that might sound like, oh yeah, I knew he was going to say that. But the reality is, by understanding who you are first, you understand what also you're not, and understanding what's going to put you into sync as you continue to build your company, and also what's going to put you into strain as you build your company. And so I reflect on, who I was when I was starting my company as a solopreneur, and understood that so much of the specification, the research, the facts that were necessary for me to articulate to my students and to my clients were going to be straining for me to gather and to compose and to put together and then to deliver the follow-up and continue to do that. I knew that I was going to have to go into strain. But what it also taught me was, hey, if somebody enjoys that, and if somebody needs to do more specific research, somebody needs to create systems, somebody needs to be more tangible or not, well, we have roles within the company that are going to fulfill those needs and not only satisfy, but send these people into a point where they can't believe how exciting it is to perform that job and that role and that responsibility. So I would say, even if you're coming up with the idea, it's a good idea to understand who you are so that you can eventually build a team around you. And with small teams, understanding each other during what is, more often than not, the most stressful phase of growing a business will help you not only perform better and get to an achievable result at a faster rate, but it will help you to eliminate the tension that ends up being created inevitably when you're going through all the struggles that a small business or a budding business is going to go through.
Tell me what's next level look like? You mentioned Thrive, and I think I'm aware a little bit about Thrive, but what is Thrive, and how can businesses use that as part of sort of this consulting with MGM or College Confidence Coach?
So Thrive Together is actually a separate company. We have right now, CJ and I are in the phase, actually, you want to talk about startup and growth. We're in the phase of figuring out what our corporate structure looks like, because we have MGM Coaching is a separate entity than College Confidence Coach, which is a separate entity, then Thrive Together. Thrive Together is actually for relationship coaching and using the conative matrix and the conative understanding of your partner to be a better spouse, to be a better partner, to be a better parent. So we're using that in a lot of different capacities, and our wives are excited to get involved with that in the near future. But it's a totally separate entity of what we do in MGM.
But it's a very interesting point of where we are, because a lot of what we find is we work with certain teams, certain professionals, certain individuals who are instrained so much in their day-to-day roles that it ends up following them to the home life, right? And then if you're in stress, or if you're in strain, if you're constantly stressful at work and then you're going home, are you being the best partner to your spouse? Are you being the best parent to your children? And so again, it's all about this understanding of who you are, and as Evan says, who you're not. But it's very interesting how, and this is something Evan said in the beginning of the episode, it just allows you to open up communication channels, right? And if you look at your mind with the three parts involved, right? Cognitive, affective, conative. If your instincts are off, if your conative mind is in strain, that's going to put this affective stress and affective negative view on your mind, which only leads into, professionally allows you not to fire your cognitive mind the highest rate it can be. But then, you look at your family life, you're not being the best spouse, you're not being the best parent, you're not being the best brother, sister, cousin, whoever, friend. So again, it always goes back to finding that understanding of who you are instinctively, because it doesn't change from the time you are a fully developed adult to the time you move on in this life.
Well, I'll say this with certainty: if you need a beta test, or there's a couple
We know
might
where to
be
go.
great Thrive customers.
I love it.
Well, I can tell you this. As the father of 5 and a 10 quick start, my wife, Nicole, is stability in our house. And her conative profile is actually that she's a modifier, right? So understanding that about one another is just one very practical example I can mention of, how this works. If she didn't understand that about me, that my needs were constantly going to be in this innovative, spontaneous, excited mindset, and she was a type of person that says, well, you need to be home at this time, you need to help with this routine. And it's not that I don't do those things. I love doing those things. But I also understand that some of those activities or some of those demands that we all have, right, as spouses, as partners, as parents, are going to put me in strain regardless of whether I'm at work or whether I'm at home. So having that understanding of each other allows both of us to operate in a way that creates more synergy within the household and creates a better environment to parent in. So
That's a great partnership.
Same with business, right? We understand each other at a level that when CJ on his Tuesday morning meeting says, hey, here's the checklist and the agenda for the day, I sit back and I make sure I have an extra large coffee that morning, and I try and just pay attention to every point that he has to make, because it's part of his system. And I respect that about his system. So even though my follow through is much more adaptive and I'd rather just, let's focus on one thing and move to the next, I understand CJ's need for procedures and vice versa. When I'm bouncing crazy ideas off, he's trying to filter what the 2 good ones out of the 100 I'm throwing at him at 3 a.m. are. So it's a better understanding of each other.
Well, and it allows you as business partners, as employees, as whatever that relationship looks like professionally, to get the most out of what you're doing, right? Like if I want Evan to be at his best, if I want Evan to be at his most creative, at his most innovative, I put a putter in his hand and I let him walk around the office, right? Like I'm never going to have him sit down at a desk across from me and go through an agenda of here's what we need to discuss in a sequential order. The moment I do that, his mind is, this isn't me. He's going to feel boxed in, right? So if I force him to do that, or if I'm a manager to my employee and I force them to do that, you're not actually getting the best out of your employee. You think that's how you're supposed to do things because that's how things have been done forever. But if you understood that the person sitting across from you actually needs to stand up and get around, and that's how they're becoming more effective, well, your business is only going to become better. The relationships you have within your office are only going to become better. And the only other option to that is you're going to make more money, right? And as businesses, that's what you're looking to do. So The moment you can focus on the people, the moment you can focus on what their needs are, the business side comes around and the finances, it's the only positive outcome that's necessary.
I mean, that is such a good point, CJ, that understanding of what drives one of your employees as a manager, as a leader, if you treat everyone the same, or if it's a rah-rah approach or a sort of trust but verify approach, everyone will respond differently to that. So if you had a tailor-made management plan or leadership plan for your 5 employees, for your 10, for your 100 employees, how much more effective would that style be when you were playing to the strengths and to the challenges or weaknesses or strain points? So, we're finding that now and working with both of you guys, that we're able to better understand what makes a particular lawyer in our firm excel. And then if you can speak that individual's language, it begins to resonate with them, as opposed to you need to do it this way or you need to do it that way, or we all need to do it this way, because that simply is, in this day and age, especially, I think, unrealistic.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, it's backed by science, right? Like, it's not like an employee is sitting down telling their manager, in order for me to work better, I need to work less and get on the golf course more. It's like, no, like, you're just making something up. Here, we can look at the facts, we can look at the science and say, here's exactly what you need in order to work at the best of your capabilities. And there's no faking it, right? You can't fake it.
We always say that the process is not designed to be a crutch.
Right.
It isn't designed to give you ways to get out of things that you don't like doing. It's actually the recognition that I understand that this is part of my role and this is part of the responsibility and what I owe to my employer. Approaching that with a level of saying, I'm going to enter strain, because regardless of, and beyond just the profile and the results, we all have to enter totally different zones on a daily basis. If you're lucky, you can get into sync, 70% of your day. That means 30% of the day, and that's, again, if you're very fortunate and you love what you do, 30% of your day is still spent in strain. But it's the understanding that these are the tasks and these are the roles and this is what I have to do that's going to put me into strain that becomes much more approachable and much more pleasant, knowing that you've built your day and you've built your routine and you've built your time management around having sync buffers, around it. So look at best practices, right? Or at least the largest practices. Look at Amazon. Look at Google. Like, have you ever seen The Internship with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and like that office, like there's people going down slides, they're going into meditation rooms. And it's not that everybody needs tangible space, but there is a really, really, really ignored and neglected sector of people who are accommodating or initiating implementers who just have to have that breakout point and they have to have that space and they have to see it. Otherwise, they're going into strain so often that it leads to tension. And then what we're trying to avoid for everybody is burnout. And, all of us have burnt out at certain points. And if you go back to the times in your life where you were experiencing this, I don't know if I can do it anymore. Why am I going through this? What's the point? It was probably at a point in your life where not only was your work environment causing and creating strain, or the way that you were approaching things was not the way that you needed to do them, but it could have carried over to your home life. It could have carried over into, anything. So take the emotions out of what burnout is and focus more so on, what is instinctually putting me to this point of tension that's eventually leading to a point where, I don't know if I can do it anymore.
That's powerful. That realization where there are steps that can be taken to avoid what otherwise would be inevitable, I think is so compelling. And I think, over 13 years, Evan, you've got this great track record. You've got momentum built over the last 4 or 5 now with this partnership with CJ. What does the future hold? Think out 5 years. Is your business scalable? I mean, you don't make widgets. It's not a manufacturing company. It's driven by expertise and knowledge of this subject matter. But what do you dream about, the two of you? How scalable is the business? How much can you grow it? Are you going to keep it its current size and just think about adding value to the handful of clients that you're representing, or where do you see this business going in the next 3 or 5 years?
So, as a coaching company that is going to have hopefully even more, separate entities within its umbrella, I think that there's unlimited potential as to how much it can grow and scale. As for how I envision it, College Confidence Coach, I'm very proud to say, has a process now that is repeatable, is scalable, and is franchisable, or at least licensable. So the immediate future for College Confidence Coach is finding people who want to take ownership of a branch of College Confidence Coach and opening them up in other cities. And then for MGM, I mean, from a national perspective, we really are excited about what we have here.
Well, and we've had the conversation before where, I think our dream, our goal is, we've got coaches who specialize in certain industries, right? So, you have coaches who specialize in the law industries, coaches who specialize in the athletic space, coaches who specialize in accountancy firms, or whatever the case may be. But right now, again, we're not even a year old, which is wild to think, but being able to grow at a scale and a level where it's not too much too quick, but it's also, if we stay where if we're where we are in 2 years, we're not doing something right. You know what I mean? Because I think there are so many opportunities to grow and scale in terms of size and who we can help. But at the current moment, you take on too many clients, then you're not providing a value to them, and then it's not fair to anybody.
It reminds me of the back in the day. I mean, you remember with Jack, like it's, College Confidence Program, we only take so many students, or at that time, we only took so many students because we didn't have the coaching capacities. Right. And, that's MGM's bottleneck to burst through, which College Confidence Coach did over time. And, we'll grow and do the same thing, I'm confident, with MGM. But it is, sky is the limit at this point, and we're really excited about what is going to develop in the next 12 months on the CCC side, and potentially the next 12 to 18 months on the MGM side.
Well, and I mean, the ideas and the plans and the strategies and things that we have written down now are exciting, but there's only 24 hours in the day, right? And there's so many of us that can handle a coaching meeting or whatever the case may be. So it really does come down to how quickly can we hire coaches, train them up, get them to our expertise level. I mean, you're not going to be able to replicate 13 years of experience in 6 months' time, but how close can you get someone to at least understanding the process, what we do, how we provide our value in order to get them, that expertise that is necessary for us to provide to our clients?
Well, look, having been clients of both CCC and MGM, I have absolutely no doubt that the business is going to continue to grow. I'm curious, for our entrepreneur listeners, some of our small business owners, people that are starting up businesses and putting in the hard work that it takes to try to succeed. After 13 years, Evan, of doing this, or you guys working together, any advice you would give to those entrepreneurs? Success doesn't come easy, obviously, but anything along the way that, looking back, you think, I wish I would have known what I know now when I was launching this business 13 years ago or 5 years ago. Any lessons learned or challenges overcome that you're proud of?
So I hate to, again, at the risk of sounding cliche and at the risk of sounding salesy, because I truly mean this and I believe it in my core. And if I didn't, I don't think that either coaching company would grow. But if you're not willing to invest in yourself, then you're not really ready to invest yourself into a business. And the lessons that I've learned and the real moments, and as entrepreneurs, we all have them. We look back and we say, this was a dark period. There was a lot there. But understanding who you were in that moment and reflecting on it and taking the time to understand who you are, not just cognitively, but in addition to that, affectively and cognitively, and taking the time to really realize what got you to that next level, or what was the motivation that took you to that next step, and becoming very intentional with your own thoughts and the way you speak to yourself and the way that you document your gratitude for the journey that you've gone on is the best piece of advice that I can give anybody. And certainly as I've gone through my own growth, I look back on the copious amounts of notebooks. I'm thinking about the top shelf in the coaching office. I probably have 25 notebooks that are on the top shelf that are all just annual documentations and notes of, what was going well, what wasn't, what's the goal, did we achieve it, and, just continuing to document. So that would be my piece of advice.
And if I were to, give any sort of advice, and I don't think this will come to a shock to Evan or anybody, but build relationships, right? And I was fortunate enough to learn young in my career and even before my career, and probably like high school, college, that being able to build a proper relationship that isn't, hey, I'm looking for something from you, but it's just out of curiosity. It's simply out of who are you, how can I understand you better, and how can I ultimately help you, as opposed to how can you help me? Understanding that it's a give first relationship as opposed to a take first relationship is so important. And, we've seen it firsthand, especially now with COVID and the way the new generation is being raised. So many people are struggling to have face-to-face conversations. And it's becoming increasingly clear that more people need to learn how to listen intently. More people need to learn how to have a face-to-face conversation and look at someone in the eyes and take them out to coffee and be able to talk for 45 minutes to a stranger. It's an art that can be taught. It's an art that can be learned. And once you can figure out the power behind connecting others and building relationships, whether you're building a business, whether you're looking for clients, whether you're looking for partners or whatever the case may be, when you've got that network of individuals to call on for help, it's truly unmatched. And I mean, I think about this partnership, this wouldn't have happened without networking, right? So,
or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. Exactly.
And then it becoming what it is.
But, you think back to when you're, 5 years old playing on the playground, you're just going up to a random kid and playing because you both enjoy playing on the swings. Same thing today. I mean, we built our relationship playing squash, and here we are, right? It's just a hobby that we both enjoy and something that we get very competitive at, which is awesome. But that was almost the bond that built our relationship where, for others, it's, fancy wines. For others, it's golfing. For others, it's hiking. For others, it's book club. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't have to be you go to a networking event, you got the name tag on, you're meeting a bunch of strangers in a room. That's difficult to do. Quite honestly, I'm never going to say I'm a fan of those events. I go to them when necessary, but I would much rather have a one-on-one conversation. I'd much rather go to a hockey game. I'd much rather, take someone to lunch and get to know someone on that more intimate level so that down the road, when I have the ability to help, I can. And sometimes it takes a simple email, a simple text to just connect someone. But, that relationship or those multiple relationships that you build, they're truly the best way to help propel your career moving forward.
I think I couldn't agree more, and I think it made me think of, I once heard the founder of a local insurance agency that we would all know say that it's 5 gives before you even think about an ask. And when you talk about the art of relationship building, it just always stuck with me that that this is the most a sales oriented industry, insurance and insurance salesmen. We've all heard the stories about, but to hear this exec and founder talk about giving more than you get, as you pointed out, to the tune of 5 to 1 at minimum was telling to me, and I think echoes the sentiment you just expressed, Siege. So I like that a lot, and I think it's important for our listeners out there to understand that's a lost art and one that can be refound, and each executive has a role or responsibility or business owner that they can play when it comes to creating value in relationships in their lives, and so thank you for making that point, Siege. Before I let you both go, I call this the lightning round, but a couple unknown facts I'd love our listeners to know about each of you. I'll lead this thing off by saying I learned something about Evan yesterday that I had never known before, and that's he's also known as a baby whisperer. And I understand you're one of the best predictors of whether it's going to be a little baby girl or a little baby boy. And so I can't remember the exact stat, but I know you're on a roll of late.
High 90s. High 90s.
Have you ever, and I know the answer to this question, have you ever not guessed correctly the sex of a baby?
I'm embarrassed that you're bringing this up right now. I was telling the story last night at dinner. My wife and I mentioned earlier, have 5 babies. I was right on the first 4. The 5th, and I'll get the video documentation to prove it, when the confetti went off at the gender reveal and it was a girl, and I was so convinced it was a boy, and I love little Nicolina, CJ's goddaughter, but the confetti fell, and I'm like, what just happened? Like my perfect record.
I was so happy to see he was wrong, to be honest. I was so happy to see he was wrong.
I want the video for sure. And Siege, I know that they're most competitive athlete and set the world on fire on every athletic stage there is, softball, squash. every other sport I can think of. But I do know you were outdone by your younger brother, Max, who this weekend actually, into his credit, raised a lot of money for Mind Over Miles and actually walked 85 miles in 24 hours, which is unprecedented. But I know you're proud of him and proud of the work that he and his colleagues did this weekend. But I know you don't have anything that can top that. But can you tell us something about you that maybe none of us know today?
Yeah, actually, we're pretty excited. We're and I know it goes back to athletics and sports, and here we are. But we're actually going on a trip in a couple weeks down to right outside Tampa. I think it's called Bowling Green, Florida, but to a resort called Stream Song on a little scouting trip, which we're pretty fired up about. But we've got works, we've got plans. We're in the development stages of building a leadership retreat around, golf, networking, cognation, really everything we do. How can we pack in a 2, 3, 4 day retreat style trip that allows a bunch of different individuals and professionals to get to know each other and better understand themselves. So, yes, it's an excuse for us to go golf for a couple days, but there's some purpose behind it. So, everyone stay tuned. If you're looking for a leadership retreat come end of 2024, give us a ring.
I've never seen him more excited. He does incredible work on everything. He develops systems and processes wise. The fact that he gets to develop a golf creation retreat, process at this point.
I think that's awesome.
It's pretty magic. It's pretty magical.
I think that's awesome. Well, look, for all our listeners out there, if you need to get in touch with these guys, they're very easy to find. MGM, CCC, I can connect you to them, but they've got a great business and a great story to tell. Take them up on their offer to meet with you anytime. So I can't begin to thank Evan and Giokas and CJ Montante enough for being here with me today, and I look forward to continuing our work together in the future.
Dave, thank you so much, and I'm excited to see you on the squash court tomorrow.
Good match, Dave. Thanks again.
Thanks,
We're really
guys.
excited to be here.